What is going on, everybody? So today we're going to be taking a look at Scarlet and Violet era booster boxes. This was the first week. I tracked all of them except for Journey Together in the spreadsheet, and I was quite surprised on the findings. I think I had some preconceived notions about what I expected to find for these SV era boxes, and to my surprise, there's a lot less on the market than I expected for some of these sets. It really was surprising to me how many of these boxes had below 100 booster boxes in total, 100 or less quantity, below a 20% leg up, especially considering that Silver Tempest, I think, had 70-ish boxes last week for Sword and Shield. Lost Origin was close to 50, I think, as well. So I expected a lot of these to be over 100, and some of these boxes do have 100 or 200, I think. 230, I believe, was like the highest for Surging Sparks on the market. But I expected those numbers to be a little bit higher, so that was surprising to me. I guess we can start with SV Base. This was below 100 booster boxes, below 20% leg up. So it's within striking distance, especially considering its sell-through rate. A lot of these earlier boxes, I believe like SV 1 to 5, most of them were selling between, I believe, 4 and 5 boxes per day on eBay North America. And a lot of them also had sealed cases selling, maybe like 2 or 3 per week. So although I don't see SV base and some of these other boxes jumping out of nowhere into like the 250-ish range, I think we're at a point, and again, we did see Paldea Evolve reach $300 during the TCG player sale. There were 1 or 2 boxes that sold right at $300. I don't think it's going to be a conversation anymore about if an SVR booster box hits $300 market value by the end of the year. I think it's going to be a conversation, and this, again, this depends on supply. If we get more supply, throw this out the window. But if we don't get more supply of these earlier SVR booster boxes, like 1 to 4, maybe even Temporal Forces, it's not going to be a conversation about if a box gets to $300. It's going to be a conversation about how many get to $300. And in my opinion, Paldea Evolved, obviously it's super close already. This could be over $300. Obsidian Flames, based on where it's at, could be over $300 by the end of the year. Same thing with Twilight Masquerade. Twilight Masquerade surprisingly creeping back up again. I still think it's probably one of the better values you can go for right now in the SV era. But all of these could be over $300. And then stuff like SV Base, which is less desirable and a bit cheaper. Paradox Rift, Temporal Forces. I think a lot of these boxes could get to like 260, 270 by the end of the year as well. Like, I think that's very reasonable based on what I'm seeing. But to get back on track, Paldea Evolved, this was within striking distance as well. I don't think we're going to see a crazy jump, but we're going to see slow, steady growth on this. Obsidian Flames, surprising, not as much supply out there as I expected. A lot less than SV Base and Paldea as well. And again, it's selling at a decent pace. So this could continue to climb into like the 250, 260, 270 range fairly quickly. It could also just slow down as well. That's entirely possible, but based on what I'm seeing, it would not surprise me if that continues to just fly. Paradox Rift, again, this is where things start to slow down a little bit. A lot of these middle sets, and Paradox Rift, it probably isn't as desirable compared to some of the other ones we're talking about today, but this has a healthy supply of booster boxes. It's more than 100. It's selling at a decent pace, but we're not going to see this jump anytime soon. The same thing goes for Temporal Forces. There's a fairly healthy supply of this booster box out there. Not as large of a supply as I thought there would be for some of these sets, but it's healthy. Decent sell-through rate, but we're not going to see this jump anytime soon. And I do really think we're at a point where sets like Paradox Rift and Temporal Forces, you heard for the longest time, people said these were going to be like the chilling infusion of the Scarlet and Violet era. I just don't think that's going to happen, unfortunately. They're both great sets. I really like Temporal Forces. I like Paradox Rift as well. Like the Paradox Pokemon in general, I'm probably a bit more bullish on those than most people are. I think they're great sets. I love the artworks. But the reality is, I just do not think that these are going to pop off in the future and get to chilling fusion levels. The uncomfortable truth is that there just isn't a top chase card in either of these. In fusion, you have the Gengar, you have the Espeon, you have the Mew, you also have the Celebi and a couple other cards in there. You have the Blaziken in Chilling Reign, which, despite what anybody says, is a solid chase card. You also have the Galarian Moltres, you have the Gold Snorlax, you have some other birds in there as well, and some decent chase cards like Galarian Slowpoke. So it's a solid set, and they're both better objectively compared to Temporal Forces and Paradox Rift. I understand Paradox Rift cards are going to be less expensive, the pull rates are better, but I don't think you can compare them honestly to Chilling and Fusion. That's just my opinion. Twilight Masquerade, I still think this is a sleeper. I don't think it's going to pop off and go to like 260, 270 anytime soon, but we're going to see slow, steady growth on this. It's a great set. I already alluded to the fact that it's probably one of the best values you can find right now in the Scarlet and Violet era, in my opinion. Stellar Crown, there's a decent amount of supply out there for Stellar Crown, and to my surprise, this really was shocking. Stellar Crown was the slowest selling set this week out of any of the Sviera booster boxes. This was also my first week tracking Stellar Crown. I had been adding in a couple Sviera sets every week. So I'm curious to see over the next, month or two what the sell-through rate for this box looks like in comparison to maybe some of the earlier sets. But it did surprise me that it was about 50% of Paldea Evolved, Obsidian, Paradox, all of those sets. It really was a fair amount slower, and that's kind of contributed to the higher days of inventory remaining. It's also a newer set, so I think people just aren't as bullish on it. It's more likely to get reprinted compared to the first 4 sets of Sviera, all of that jazz. And then finally, we have Surging Sparks booster boxes. I had someone ask me about this last week because they were curious with the reprint coming, how many boxes would be out there. Surging Sparks does have the most boxes below a 20% leg up on the secondary market by a decent amount, actually. So there is a fair amount out there, but it's selling at a very fast rate compared to a lot of the other boxes. Again, not like prismatic ETB level fast, but fairly respectable, about double what SV Base, Paldea, Obsidian, what those sets are going for. It's about double the sell-through rate. And I think with Twilight Masquerade, this is again like one of the better values that you can find in the Sviera for booster boxes currently. We will keep an eye on this over the next few weeks and months just because I'm not sure if boxes are even out from the reprint yet. It was the same thing with Prismatic, like once the reprint hit, it took a couple weeks before we saw the boxes on eBay peak, and honestly, they could go higher next week even. I'm just assuming based on this week's data that they're going to continue to fall, but it could be a couple weeks before, or maybe even a month, who knows how long it's going to be, before we see the kind of peak amount of boxes and quantity for Surging Sparks on the market. And the final thing I want to touch on in this video is just annualized ROI, because we are in a very interesting spot, I think, with some of these Sviera booster boxes. And again, like I was talking about some of these boxes getting to $300 by the end of the year. I still think Sword and Shield's great. Those boxes are very desirable. And you're also safe from reprints pretty much for most of them. In theory, Pokemon could go back and reprint, but more than likely, we're not going to see any more Sword and Shield. That said, over time, I do think it makes sense eventually to start moving some of your older product and moving into newer product. Normally what we see, and I'm planning to do a more in-depth video on this in the future, the first few years of a set's life cycle, you're going to see probably better growth. The first year or two, you might not even see any growth just as reprints come, but once the box goes out of rotation, those first couple years, you're going to see some pretty respectable growth more often than not. But then after, say, like the first 5 to 6 years, I think the ROI year over year is going to come down, and you can kind of track that through Sun and Moon era, XY era. There are obviously going to be exceptions to this, like Evolving Skies, since release is up 110.5% per year. And I wrote this back in February, so this might even be higher, considering you could see here the market price back in February was $1,330 approximately for a box. It's now about $2,000. If we go based on recent sales. So this number might even be higher, which is just ridiculous, the fact that you're getting over 100% return a year on Evolving Skies. But point being, I think over time, right, this number for Evolving Skies, Fusion, whatever it's going to be, the next 4 to 5 years, I think we're going to see lower annualized ROIs compared to some of the Sviera sets like Paldea Evolved, like Obsidian Flame, Surging Sparks, etc. Now, does that mean that I think you should just dump all of your Sword and Shield product and go into Scarlet and Violet era? No, I think that Sword and Shield has its place. I think there's still a lot of room for growth on those products. I think you're also protecting yourself against reprints on a lot of the sets over the next 12 to 18 months. But even though it's good to have some exposure to Sword and Shield era, whether it's Lost Origin, Fusion Strike, Chilling Reign, etc., Evolving Skies, it's good to have a plan to start transitioning a lot of your focus into the SV era, because I think over the next few years, you're probably going to do better in that era. And hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, leave a comment down below. Maybe I just did a really poor job of explaining myself, and I'll try and do better in the next video. If you guys are shopping, eBay TCG Player, Hobbiesville, Cardboard Hero, I have affiliate links down below. They're free and easy to use. It continues to support me making free videos for you guys. With that said, thanks for watching. Stay safe wherever you are in the world. Happy Memorial Day if you guys are in the States, and I'll catch you in the next one.